Elden Ring is an upcoming action RPG video game that is being developed by FromSoftware and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. The project was first announced back in 2019 and gained a lot of early publicity due to the game being a collaboration between Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin, who are known for the Souls series and Game of Thrones respectively. So let's break down everything we know about the title, including the announcement, leaks, and teases. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. And with that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Elden Ring. Let's start with the development of the game itself and what we know about the history. So the project was announced at E3 2019 with a cinematic trailer, and the trailer itself was very minimal, which usually helps games in this scenario where they don't show off too much about the game, and it leads to a lot of fan interaction and speculation on what this title will look like. In the description of the trailer, the team also teased that Elden Ring will be the largest FromSoftware game to date. Now, following the release of this trailer and the reveal of the game itself, Miyazaki did an interview with Xbox about the project. He stated that Elden Ring actually started development after support for Dark Souls 3 DLC ended, so around 2017, but the development process slowed slightly during the development of Sekiro, which makes sense. The team said they try to focus on one game at a time with slight work on other titles. So it's been in development for about 2 years at the time of the release of the trailer, so we can say the start date was around 2017. Another small development detail is Yuka Kitamura, who is a video game composer and had previously worked on Dark Souls 2 and 3, along with Bloodborne and Sekiro, announced on Twitter that she will be returning as a composer for Elden Ring. So if you like the music in those games, you can look forward to this one as well. Now, a lot of fans wondered how this collaboration came about between Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin, and it actually happened very organically. Miyazaki stated that he's a big fan of Martin's work and was vocal about his appreciation for the writer. And this actually led to an executive business director to reach out to Martin to see if he would even consider helping on the project. And all parties involved were surprised when Martin took the meeting. Miyazaki and Martin had many conversations about the world they were trying to create and the game itself, and they actually brought Martin on board to write kind of the overarching mythos of the game. And they promised that Martin is adding some of the characters, drama, and a mystery, and the team is very excited to show off the world they've created. Now, just to clarify, Martin did not actually write the game's story, he just more was there for world building and kind of some of the lore from before the events of the game. Miyazaki explained this and said they didn't want to restrict Martin's writing abilities to just a video game because FromSoftware has such a specific way they want to tell the story. And it also benefits the players because FromSoftware wanted to create a less linear game this time around, but they wanted to build the foundation of this world on Martin's world building and writing. So it still will have implications in the world and is described as a perfect mix of both creators' writing and ideas. Now, if we get into some of the gameplay and what we know about it, in this same Xbox interview I mentioned above, they gave some details about early gameplay for the title. Miyazaki said they wanted to create a new dark fantasy RPG that is, quote, full of things we weren't able to do in the Dark Souls series. Which sounds very interesting, and we aren't sure exactly what this means in terms of gameplay, but he continues on saying that compared to the studio's other titles, Sekiro, which he says focused on action, Elden Rings will have a bigger focus on RPG elements. But he reassures fans there will still be a big challenge component in-game and it still will have action moments, but they really wanted to take this to see how the team could create a fully fleshed RPG. He also promises that because of the weapons, magic, and ways to engage enemies in this new game, there will be more variety in terms of gameplay style compared to the Dark Souls series. Now, don't worry if you are a fan of Dark Souls, Miyazaki has said the gameplay is not that far from Dark Souls, and he sees Elden Ring as a more natural evolution of the Dark Souls series. which he explains this natural evolution is due mostly to new systems in game and action mechanics they have added in this larger world, which is good that he has ideas on how to keep this gameplay style fresh and progress it into the future, which really gets fans excited every time he announces a new game. Now, he did give a slight update on some of the bosses we can expect in game. He assured fans that the team still very much enjoys making boss fights, and they are creating bosses for this game as well that will be a variety of unique and horrifying experiences for players. He doesn't really elaborate any further, but that's not surprising considering there's only been one official trailer for the game. Now, in terms of the playable character, Miyazaki said it will be similar to the Dark Souls series in terms of allowing the player to design their own unique character, which makes the most sense given the heavy RPG elements in this game. And in a follow-up interview, he actually said they are leaving the characteristics and personality of the protagonist up to the player, so it sounds like they want to have very little or essentially zero involvement of the character and really want the players to fill it out for themselves and kind of breathe life into this world through the character. Now, as for the world itself, they have already stated this will be an open world game, and have stated the game will have a lot of depth for players to work with in terms of exploration and narrative. They wanted to reiterate once again, this is their biggest title yet in terms of sheer volume of a game to explore and play with. And their reason for wanting an open world, or at least a pseudo-open world, is for three main reasons. The first being they wanted to show off the game's world and lore on a grander scale. The second reason is they wanted to add more freedom and depth to the exploration. And the third reason, they wanted to create more variations on how players could approach battles, all of which are easier to add when the open world is developed. Now, the team has gone on to say players will be able to traverse this massive world on horseback and can even fight enemies without ever dismounting their horse. And a lot of fans, including myself, are excited to see how this function turns out in terms of the open world. Sekiro kind of already tested exploration, and this game looks like it will take it even a step further. Now, they've also said the world is more of a Western fantasy than a traditional Japanese setting, which they have done in the past. And that change in setting will lead to different themes compared to their previous games. They've also stated though, although this will be an RPG, there will not be traditional towns or villages in this title. Miyazaki said villages will be dark dungeon-like ruins that we have come to expect from the team in the past. And the explanation for this is pretty simple. Basically, the team wanted to stick with what they know they can do and didn't want to put in development time into towns and villages if they didn't think they could get it up to players' expectations. But yes, there will be NPCs, they just most likely won't be located in any of these towns or villages. And the last thing I want to touch on about the world itself is the meaning of the Elden Ring. Miyazaki said this term is a concept that defines the world itself, and in the trailer we see this Elden Ring has been shattered and will be one of the more important themes of the game. They don't share any more details and they want players to experience it for themselves, but yes, it is a tangible object that seems to be destroyed before the events of the game starts. Now, as for platforms, the game has been confirmed for release on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. But with the next generation of consoles launching, it would seem strange if the game isn't coming out on those platforms as well. And with the release looking like 2021 or 2022, it seems like we can almost expect that the game will come to next generation consoles as well. Now, this isn't confirmed, but FromSoftware would be missing out on being a major release for current generation consoles if they decide to skip it. As with any game that is this high profile and anticipated, with seemingly very few confirmed details, there's always going to be so many leaks and rumors. There are a few that I think are worth touching on, but as always, take these with a grain of salt because there are a lot and they vary in what they say and things they are trying to get people to believe. Now, the first leak comes from 4chan in April of 2020 and is a massive list of text about the game. It claims that there will be 8 kingdoms in-game plus a final boss area. The leak says that kingdoms are bigger than any Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne levels, and there are new versions of bonfires called Prey Sanctuaries, and there's only one in each kingdom. Now, bosses in the kingdoms will have multiple phases that are some of the most challenging bosses FromSoftware has ever created. And before reaching the kingdom bosses, you will have to fight mini bosses as well. The open world area is called the field, and this is where players will ride their mounts. Players start with a horse, but as they progress can unlock a wolf, bear, tiger, and even more unique animals. And some bosses will even require a mount element to defeat them. Power stances are returning with switch weapons, and leveling up is similar to Dark Souls, but there will be more layers like a talent tree. There will be a jump mechanic in this game, but players will be heavier than in Sekiro, and the jump mechanic will be more like Dark Souls. There's also going to be a PvP element, which is only accessible in the field, and there's a ranking system for PvP as well. Now, within the field itself, players will fight other mini-bosses, and the open world is going to be seamless. There are going to be no towns and villages, and we will encounter NPCs that will sell the player goods. Some of the NPC players encounter will also provide side quests that we can go on. League goes on to say there are 5 endings for the game, which depends on how the player treats NPCs and other actions in the main quest. Speaking of the 8 kingdoms, the player starts the game by spawning in one of the kingdoms, and that actually depends on how the player creates the protagonist in the customization screen. And there will also be a class to pick, which will impact which kingdom you spawn in. And the kingdoms can really be played in any order, but they will still vary in difficulty and level. Now, the main currency in this game are called limbs, and the most important limbs are acquired after boss battles, which then can be traded to an elven queen, and she will give players a unique ability. Exploration will also be a big part of the game. Just to get to the different kingdoms, players will have to traverse fields, swamps, caverns, and mountains to get to the kingdom before they can even start playing with it. So there will be a huge emphasis on exploration. Now, there's really not too much to say about this leak. Anyone who follows leaks, they are usually almost impossible to disprove unless another insider or the game company itself comes out against it. So it usually just comes down to what you believe. I kind of like this one, and I think this is probably the one I'm going to spend the most time on, just because I think some of the information sounds true, but who knows, it all could be completely wrong. The next leak came in May of 2020 and claims that FromSoftware wanted to launch the game in early to mid 2020, but the game was delayed due to COVID, so the team actually started to work on the next generation versions of the game as well, so for the PS5 and Xbox One. The leak states the game is actually completed in terms of gameplay from beginning to end, but the team now is working on the next generation version, and they are in the optimizing stage of the game, which is why the game was delayed till Q3 of 2020, which we now know did not end up happening. But to me, this also sounds like it could be a true leak. I think the fact that the game was announced for last generation consoles, so the PS4 and Xbox One, means that I think at one point they were planning to launch the game before the release of next generation. I think COVID most likely did have a big part of this, and I think this leak could be true, but that the game was still delayed past Q3 because, like they said, they are working on next gen, and there was no point in releasing just for the PS4 and Xbox One with the time frame they already had, and they might as well just delay because they never really gave an official release date. So I really like this leak too, and I think there could be some truth to it. And for the most part, the leaks go on and on, varying in quality. One in 2019 claimed that the next game from FromSoftware is called Fae Souls, which was debunked. Another claimed that popular Souls YouTubers were flown out to see Elden Ring, which I would say is usually not true because a YouTuber leaking the information is usually not worth the risk. There was an alleged gameplay screenshot that has been circulated, so I'm not really going to cover any of these because there's so many and they vary, and for the most part I don't really think any of these are super true or even worth giving any time to, but I will link them down below if you guys want to check those out and if you are interested. Now, the last rumor I want to talk about is about the release of the game itself, and it comes from the Xbox Era podcast, where they claim that Elden Ring will be shown off at this year's Game Awards, but they said this is not 100% confirmed from their source. And this actually lines up with a previous 4chan leak that came out before the Xbox Era podcast, and also claim that the game will be revealed at the 2020 Game Awards. And then they will also announce that the game has a release date in March or April. The leak goes on to claim the game will be cross-generation, like we've heard before, and will run at 60 frames per second on next-generation consoles and PC. The game will contain multiplayer between Xbox and PC players, but not PlayStation at launch. And the game, even though it will have multiplayer, can still be played entirely solo, and there will be an invasion system returning in-game. And the idea of a Game Awards reveal or announcement is not surprising, because that is where Sekiro was originally announced back in 2017, so it wouldn't be too surprising, and the Game Awards are just around the corner next month. And with 2 leaks both talking about this, I think it is a good chance we could see it then. So what should we expect in this year and beyond? I would say it's definitely possible and even likely that we could see the game revealed at the Game Awards and released early next year, and I think those leaks might be right on the target. It also sounds like the game will have some sort of multiplayer component based on multiple leaks, and is in a pretty playable state. Phil Spencer says he has been playing a lot of Elden Ring and called it Miyazaki's most ambitious game, so it sounds like the game has been playable for quite a while and polished enough to show the game off to executives. And it's not completely out of the question that FromSoftware has been able to develop this game almost completely in secret, which is basically just my long-winded way of saying I would expect the game very soon, most likely for last gen and current gen consoles. And I think it will be a huge cultural moment when it releases, and I think a lot of fans will be shocked at what this game actually is. And for the most part, that is everything we know about Elden Ring, and that's where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.